Hey guys, Brian here from Better Chess Training, and in today's video, I'm going to be playing one of the bots on chess.com. This one is named Jimmy, and its rating is 600. And the idea is I'm going to try to explain my moves for beginners. And in today's game, I'm going to assume that you've just learned how the pieces work. So I'm going to try to go from there, and then in subsequent programs in this series, I will build upon that knowledge. So, if you are one of my regular listeners who's been playing for a while, you could, of course, review and check it out. But this is really aimed for beginner players who maybe have just learned how the pieces move. Okay, so I have white here. I'm going to start out here with e4. And if you're just beginning, you may not know the notation. And I'm not going to cover it here, so I recommend you look this up, algebraic notation. It's important to know that so that you can discuss chess and read chess books and such. Okay, started out here with e4. My opponent started with d6. This is also known, can go into what's called the Peert's defense. It can also transpose into other defenses. But the idea is that black will maybe either attack here if he wants to transpose into the Philidor, or play this and his bishop here. So in the opening, we really want to do three things. We want to try to control the center, we want to develop our pieces, and we want to keep our king safe. So I'm going to show you how I do that here. And I'm going to play d4. And the idea here is that these two pawns cover this center and control this center. Okay? Here my opponent is playing h5. And so this is kind of an odd move. And sometimes if you're a beginner, you'll see this where they play their rooks out. And unfortunately, that would not necessarily be a good idea. Okay? In addition, this move isn't so great because it doesn't really help us with one of those three objectives, which is to develop the pieces. And normally we mean these, what they call the minor pieces, the bishops and the knights first, and nor does it really contribute to controlling the center or keeping your king safe. Okay, so from here, I can really do a lot of different things. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to develop this knight here. Okay, and a lot of times your knights are going to just want to go to the center here where they can attack. Okay, here my opponent plays bishop to g5, and that's now we see why he played h5. So he can play bishop to g4, attacking my queen. Okay, so my queen is threatened. There's a few things I can do here. I can either block this bishop, and this might be a good time to talk about the value of the pieces. We mainly use a measure that starts with the pawn as 1 point. And with that in mind, the standard values are the knights and the bishops are worth 3, the rooks are worth 5, and the queen is worth either 9 or 10, depending on how that works. So, of course, taking this bishop would be a bad idea because this queen is worth a lot more, and so I want to protect it. So here, a few things I could do. I could either play something like f3, which would block this bishop using a piece that's a lower value. I could also use my knight to f3 because it's, again, of the same value. Or I could just move the queen. And so I haven't quite decided which one would be the best. And there is one other move here. I could use my bishop here. There's a bunch of different moves to block, but the basic idea is to use a piece of a lower value to get between my queen and this bishop. So with that in mind, I think there's a few good moves I can make here. I'm actually going to go ahead and play this bishop out. And here I have my own threat, which is to take this bishop. And then after he takes back with the pawn, I take back with the queen, which would win material. Okay, here my opponent plays b6. And again, and I know this is the beginner bot, but what you want to do in the games that you play is make sure that your moves have some type of purpose. And you want to try to also figure out what your opponent's trying to do. But in this case, this move does not really serve that much of a purpose unless he maybe plans on playing something like c5. So, but I actually have a threat here, which is to take this bishop, and then if he takes back with the pawn, it will take back with the queen, which would give me a net win of 1 pawn. And so I double check to make sure there's no funny business. And the only thing that he might have is now this rook has this H file. Okay. And so again, these columns going up and down are called files, and these rows going across are called ranks. And so rooks want to have open files. So for the winning of the pawn, I guess you could say I'm giving this rook a open file, but I can't see that he could do much with it. The only danger would be if I castled on this side, but my king has not castled yet, so I could always castle to the other side. So I don't see anything wrong with just going ahead and taking this piece. Okay, now the Jimmy bot decides instead to defend this pawn, which of course is a mistake, because this I'm now up a bishop, and normally a lot of times that's going to be enough to win. So let's see what we can do. Now, first thing you want to be thinking of is, well, I want to get my bishop out of here. And so where's the best place to put him? There's a few ways to look at this. We can think about retreating it, but we have a couple squares that we can retreat it to. Okay. And then we could also see if there's anything going on down here. And of course, we could also take. Now, taking would be probably a bad idea, because if we took this this pawn, then he can take back with his pawn. And then if my queen tried to take it, then he would win more material with the rook. So that's a bad idea. Going down towards black's position, there's no real targets here. So probably not a good idea either. So now we're talking about retreating. And in this case, we have a few squares to retreat to. We can retreat here to h6, to f3, or to e2. Now, in this case, I'm actually going to back up to e2, because I could go to h3, but then there's dangers of him pushing this pawn and trying to trap my bishop. I could go to f3, but I think that might be the best place for my knight. So I'm actually going to drop back here to e2. And we can say now that we're winning, but of course we need to actually finish the game. Okay. In this case, he's not really threatening anything at this moment. So again, I can continue to develop. So your general thought process here is you're going to see if your opponent is threatening something, if he's threatening to take one of your pieces or threatening your king in some way. If he isn't, then you can continue on with your plan, which in this case, because we're in the opening, is to develop these pieces. Now, planning from there, what I'm thinking of doing is actually developing this bishop and then this queen so that I can castle over on the queen side, because my opponent has already advanced these pawns on the king side, and then he can maybe attack there. Of course, I don't have to commit to anything fully yet. So right now, I'm just going to develop I'm going to develop my bishop here. I could probably go here also, or even here. Okay, now my opponent plays b5, which is threatening to play b4. So this now, again, is shedding light on whether or not I should think of castling this way, because now he can maybe advance these pawns and attack me. But more importantly, I have to look at what he's thinking of doing with this b4. Is this something that I'm worried about? One thing you can do when your opponent is making a threat to do that, you can consider, well, what if I just let him play b4? Is that really a bad idea? This knight can do a few things. It is protecting this pawn. So right now, nothing's attacking it. So that's good. So it's okay if we let him play b4 maybe. And then we have to consider, where are we going to put this knight? Well, this knight can go a few places safely. He cannot go here to d5 because this pawn would take it. He can go to a4 and as well as b1. But b1, unless I had the plan to come back out here to d2, maybe isn't such a great idea. The other option is to prevent b4. Oh, wait, before I get to that, if he does play b4, bishop to a or knight to a4, the only thing I think I would have to be worried about is a move like queen to a5, which would attack this. And with the pawn here on b4, he would threaten maybe advancing it with check and attacking my king and my knight at the same time. But, and maybe I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself, if he played b4 and I played knight to a4 and he played queen to a5, I could always play b3 to protect it. So I'm really not worried about this b4, and maybe it's something that I just don't have to worry about. So I can continue my development. Now, I have two more main pieces to develop, and then I could think about castling. That would be my knight and my queen. Here, I'm not quite sure where I want to put my queen yet, because at first I was thinking, well, I could move him to d2 or maybe d3 and then castle. But now, because he's starting to play here on the queen side, I'm not sure if I want to do that. So a simpler plan, or a plan that I can do in any case, is maybe play knight to f3, developing my knight, and now I could still continue by castling to the king side, or still think about castling to the queen side. Okay. Now, here we have knight to a6, and we have to look at where can this knight go. Can't really go here because this is protected at the moment, but maybe it can go here. And then we have to consider, is that really something dangerous and something we want to prevent? At the moment, I really am not sure that it is, because from here, he is not really attacking anything that's not defended. So not really something I'm too afraid of. So I can continue my plan here. Now I have two main choices that I'm thinking of. One is just a castle over here on the king side, and that would get my king to safety. So in the opening, one of the objectives is to keep your king safe. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to castle on the king side, or on the queen, actually on the queen side as well. But basically, you're putting your king in the corner of the board, because a lot of the action is going to be happening in the middle of the board with, as we'll see in this game probably. Also, you have these pawns in front that protect the king. So we definitely want to castle at some point. As you get more advanced, there are certain setups where you do not castle, but as a good general rule for beginners, castling is a good idea. Okay, and actually, again, I'm not quite sure what he's going to do with this knight. The other thing to think about: this knight right now is not being protected. We say that this piece is hanging, but there's no real way to get at it. So again, I could kind of ignore it for the moment. And I think at this point, I can just castle. Okay. And what I want you to do is think about what we're talking about here, and let me know if there's anything that confuses you. You can put the notes in the comments, and then I'll try to answer them. But basically, I'm just trying to show you how you can develop your pieces. Now you can see we're in pretty good shape overall. We have all of our minor pieces developed. Our king is safe, and we have this nice control of the center. So now we have to start thinking about what we're doing next. And part of this is we have to look at our opponent's position and see what's happening here. In this case, we do see that, or at least I see that our opponent is very underdeveloped, meaning that he still needs to get his king to safety. These pieces aren't doing anything. And so when this happens, when you have a big lead in development, it might be a good idea to look for ways to, what they say, open up the position and try to attack. So we want to consider different moves that do that. One of those moves would be something like e5, which would, if the opponent exchanges pieces, could definitely open up the position. Now, there is a little problem I'm seeing, is that if we do that and we open up this e file, this queen is sitting here, and this rook can come over and harass it. So maybe we don't want to quite do that yet, and we want to prepare a little bit more. And so that's what I think I'm going to do here. The other idea that we want to take a look at is the fact that this bishop is aiming at this queen, but this pawn is in the way. So one thing we need to consider is maybe we want to play something like d5. And what can our opponent do there? Now, of course, if he takes it, we'll just take his queen. He could also move his queen, in which case we can take the c-pawn. And then the other option, if we go here, is that he might push this c-pawn. And then we have to consider again whether or not that is a good idea. Now, actually, as I'm just watching here, and I am doing this live, I haven't prepared this game. I'm playing this game as we speak. If I push that and then he pushes here, I actually have a really nice trick or a nice move is that I can actually take this pawn here on b5 with check. So actually this might be a good idea. So if he goes here, we see that that's not a great idea. If we go here, he really pretty much has to move the queen. And then if I want to, I can take this pawn here. And then after he takes back, I can take this pawn. So this looks actually like a great idea. And again, we can look for these types of moves because we're already developed and our king is safe. So I'm going to go ahead and play that move. Okay, here he puts this knight in the way. And that is what's blocking. Again, knights are worth the same as bishops. But again, I could follow through with my little plan here, which is to take on c6. I'll check to make sure there's nothing that's kind of troubling me here. If I take on c6, one idea is he can actually play b4 right here. But what I can actually do is just play, well, let's see what I can do here. I can trade with him and take his bishop, or take his knight with my bishop. And then if he takes back, I can just move my knight to safety. The reason why I say that is because right now, actually, if he plays here, I can play here because this knight is what they call pinned to this queen. So this knight cannot move without him losing his queen, which would be really good for me. So I can kind of ignore this right now, and I could kind of ignore b4. Again, the whole point here is that we have to look for our opponent's threats. And I know if you're just starting out, that's a lot to take in, but just try it, and with practice, it'll come more easily. So I can go ahead and take on c6. And if he takes back with the queen, he'll be in a lot of trouble. Okay, so now we see he develops his bishop, finally. And so this bishop is attacking this knight. Now, I have a couple ideas here. And one is to maybe play knight to d5, attacking his queen. And the idea there is that if he takes back, and this is kind of a combination, if he takes back on c6, then I can actually take here on b5. And if he takes with the queen, I have this nasty knight fork, which we'll see if that could happen. So that's one possibility, is play knight to d5. Now, if I play knight to d5, he pretty much has to move his queen, or otherwise I'm just going to take it. One thing to note here is that this pawn would also be hanging if I move my knight. But because my threat is greater, meaning that losing his queen is that much worse, that he has to deal with my threat first. So when you are playing and you're looking at your opponent's threats, let's say your opponent's attacking one of your pieces, you can either deal with that directly or you can make a threat of your own. Okay, so I actually like that move quite a bit. Let me just make sure there's no other options that would be even better. I really like that option. So let's go ahead and play that, knight to d5. Okay, and here he's protecting his, actually he didn't move his queen at all. So, and again, this is a beginner bot. So you always got to keep your eyes open. And maybe I need to kind of step back away from sort of the advanced strategies and look at the fact you always have to be aware of your opponent's pieces and where they are. And here I can just take his queen. And again, my king is perfectly safe. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this queen. And now we are winning by a lot. Okay, in fact, he doesn't take it back. And he advances this pawn. Now, what I could do is actually, instead of, so my knight is threatened, But what I can do here is, again, make a bigger threat of my own by advancing this pawn. Okay, and as you know, if we get this pawn all the way to the 8th rank, then we can promote it. And here, my opponent, the bot here, is just not playing very well at all, which is okay. I'm going to actually take his rook and promote to a queen. Now, he is going to get it back with his king. And here, I've got a few really nice moves. Now, this pawn is hanging. There is nothing protecting it. But I have to decide, do I want to take it with my knight or with my queen? Now, normally I would do a lot of, if I were playing in a blitz game, I might just take this with the queen right away. But let's see, is there any reason why I would want to take it with the knight? Well, it would keep the knight safe, but in this particular case, I will be taking this pawn with check with the queen, and I'll force him to go somewhere with the queen, or with the king. So I would be able to do something else with the knight. So I don't have to take that right away. Another option, just to let you know, is I could actually also take this knight, which is also hanging. Okay, so I think what we'll have to do is play a stronger bot next time. But so what I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to take with the queen. And here it forces, now his king is attacking my knight. I can just ignore that, or I could do something else. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take this knight with my queen, because then it's also protecting my knight. Again, I could look for some more options, but this is a pretty clear idea here. And again, I am taking with check, so it's forcing my opponent, to retreat. Okay, so now we're actually nearing the end of the game, and here I have a few options. Okay, so we do have some checks. Actually, I'm just going to show you here. There's a couple ways to check the king. Actually, there's a bunch of ways, right? And what I want you to do, there's actually a way to checkmate the king right from this position and win the game instantly. I want you to take a look at this position and see if you can find that winning move. And you can pause the video if you want, but I'm just going to wait for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to show you. Okay, in this position, you can checkmate black with this move, queen to c8. We're going to go over a couple of the key points here real quick, just so you can review. And I would encourage you, if there's anything you didn't understand, would be to leave a question in the comments. And again, this is aimed at beginners, so don't feel that any of your questions are silly or something that you should know. We all have to start somewhere, and there's this famous quote that every master, and I'm not yet a master myself, every master was once a beginner. So if that's where you are, then that's fine. Okay, well, in here, again, we talked about developing our pieces, the 3 goals of the opening. Develop your pieces, control the center, and get your king to safety. And here, we also talked about the value of the pieces, and we were able to win a bishop here. Our bot opponent started to attack on the queen side, and in the meantime, because he didn't really have a purpose behind his play, or at least an aggressive purpose behind his play, we were able to develop our pieces and get them ready to attack. And here in this position, he moved his queen here, and we had, this is called a discovered attack, and we're able to attack his queen. And if his queen were to move, I'll give you an example, we can take, and this is what I was trying to show you earlier. If he takes, we actually take here, and now his queen, because the king is behind it, cannot move, and he's going to lose his queen. So we probably have to take here. And as you can see, that's a lot of material to win for white. So let's go back to the game. Instead, instead he covered here with the knight. He blocked. Now, one move that I did not think to play, which I could have actually played b4 here. because if he moves this knight, well, I could take it actually because it would be attacking. If I could actually take his queen here, and then if he takes my knight, I would have to move my queen out of the way. Actually, that would probably be the better way to do it. So that would have been a pretty uh, good way for white to go as well. Okay, so but I didn't notice that when I played the game. So again, this knight is pinned, so I could have attacked it with b4. Okay, so I took, and then he developed here, and then here I continued my attack with knight to d5, because now, again, if he takes here on c6, I had this really nasty combination. Let me show it to you. Bishop takes b5, queen takes b5, and then I have, this is called a fork, where I attack both his king and his queen with my knight at the same time. And because it's check, he has to deal with, he can't just ignore it, he has to deal with it. So after he moves his king out of the way, then I take his queen. Again, winning his queen. Okay? But going back to the game, he played rook to d8 instead, so I just took his queen. So always keep your eyes open for those threats. And here, I opened up the position to attack his king, and then I was able to checkmate him. And you might not have seen that at the end there, this checkmate, because the king cannot, well, he can't take my queen because it's being protected by the knight, and all of these other squares are covered by my queen. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, this video was aimed at beginners. So if you're some of my audience that are more intermediate or advanced, maybe you can share this with a beginner or let them know about it. If you are a beginner, you can continue to watch. I have other materials, including a newsletter that I put out once a week with various thoughts about chess training. I also do chess lessons for beginners, and I'll have a link down below to my lesson page. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.